Good evening from New York. After weeks of criticism that they were only attacking the president's budget but had absolutely nothing to propose in its stead, the Republican leadership on the Hill today announced it was presenting exactly what its critics had been demanding, a Republican budget. Now, our fifth story in the countdown, it doesn't contain a single actual number in it, nor indications of spending parameters or any costs. Thus, technically, it would not meet any definition, dictionary, textbook, colloquial, or pig Latin of the word budget. Fudge it? Perhaps. But though the Republicans have today offered a plan with no plan in it, don't worry, RNC Chairman Michael Steele reveals today he had a plan, a super secret double reverse fake plan, in which it would appear that he and boss Limbaugh were feuding. First, the Republican fudge it. The GOP leadership of the House eagerly releasing what he had hoped looked like an alternative to the president's one, even giving it an official-looking blue cover. All an attempt to counter Mr. Obama's challenge that they needed to back up their criticism with actual ideas.
2 nights ago, the president said, "We haven't seen a budget yet out of Republicans." Well, it's just not true, because here it is, Mr. President.
A slight problem for the minority leader. The first question he got out of the gate, excuse me, where are the details?
Details on what?
Yeah, there's no detail up there.
This is the blueprint for where we're going. Are you asking about some other document?
No, that document, the one with the pretty blue cover and nothing in between the front page and the last. Where's the actual budget in your budget, sir?
As Mr. Ryan pointed out, he'll have his alternative budget details next week.
It's going to be built on these principles?
Built on these principles right here.
Republican leader Boehner claiming that President Obama had done the exact same thing by talking about his administration's principles in his joint address to Congress, the first-year equivalent of the State of the Union, and presenting his budget details later. Only that would not be the same thing at all. Even the National Review's reporter in attendance slammed the Republicans for unveiling a sham fudget. David Ferdoso writing online, quote, "I was not the only reporter in the room during the delayed press conference who had expected to see some numbers, at least ballpark." At the White House, Press Secretary Robert Gibbs marveling at the Republican fudget, all 19 pages of it.
I will note that there's one more picture of a windmill than there is of a chart of numbers. There's, just for your knowledge, there's exactly one picture of a windmill. It's interesting to have a budget that doesn't contain any numbers. I think the party of no has become the party of no new ideas.
It's the Don Quixote fudget. It has a windmill. Time now to call in Chris Cillizza, Washington Post White House reporter and author of that paper's political blog, The Fix. Chris, good evening.
Good evening, Keith.
When the Republicans have ticked off even the reporter from the National Review at the news conference, is it time for somebody there to admit they may have a problem with this?
This is a classic political example, Keith, of putting the cart before the horse. I think there was such a concern, rightly so, that the party of no label was catching on. That's always the concern for the minority of party in Congress, especially when you don't control the White House, that you're simply cast as the opposition, and people like to rally behind ideas, not simply behind, no, we don't want to do this, but we're not going to offer anything else. So I think there was some consternation, maybe a little bit too much quick movement to try and say, here's our plan. I think Paul Ryan, who is supposed to be the guy was from Wisconsin who's going to lead the Republican alternative budget, he's a serious person. He's someone who has talked about running statewide. I think he may be a little ill-served here by some of his leadership because they put him out there without a plan really to talk about. And we all know when it comes to the budget or, frankly, anything else in government, the devil is in the details. Anyone can put out a blueprint, but figuring out how it all adds up to something is the tough part.
And it adds up to 19 pages in which it calls for lower spending and lower taxes and the end of bailouts and bringing the national debt under control. And yet, even though there are no specifics and no ways of that to be achieved, it seemed as if Mr. Boehner was shocked and actually annoyed when reporters, began to ask for details. I mean, did the Republicans honestly believe they could turn in the math homework without any numbers in it? I mean, that the teacher was going to say, "Ooh, nice folder."
Well, as a big fan of Trapper Keepers, Keith, I'm always drawn to nice folders. But, I think there was sort of a messaging problem here. Some people on that stage seem to think that this was going to be sort of a blueprint, a talking points, an outline. But a lot of people in the audience reporters, clearly expected this to be a specific proposal. You heard John Boehner say next Wednesday Paul Ryan is going to roll out the alternative budget with all the details. Well, if they had billed it as we're going to roll out the blueprint today, the rough outlines, the conservative core on which this is going to be built, and then next Wednesday we're going to give you all the details, they might have gotten a little bit of criticism, but at least reporters would have known what was coming. The problem was, I think the expectation was this is the day when we get the Republican alternative, the Republican fiscal sort of image of what they want this country to look like economically. And what we got was really sort of a talking points and pillars of the Republican Party with very little detail.
Yeah, and those are talking points that have been repeated again and again. It's not like you need to... any one of us
there's nothing new
those.
under the sun in that proposal.
Yeah, any one of us could have written those 19 pages. So what is the holdup with the numbers? Do they have to come in from Boss Limbaugh's office, or is there some some realization that there's no way to pay for everything in the manifesto without doing exactly what Obama has done, or what's the holdup?
Keith, I don't know, and so I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that this was a public relations screw-up and not an issue that they don't have the numbers. I do think that Paul Ryan is going to give us a proposal. The problem that he has now is that everyone thought the proposal was coming on Friday, so even if on Thursday, so even if they come out with this proposal, it's going to get less attention. It's the boy who cried wolf to a certain extent. Oh, we already heard this story. You already said you were putting out an economic proposal, a budget proposal, and look what we got.
Yeah, we already got the nice folder. What do you got on top of that? You got like maybe one of those plastic ones, those loose-leaf notebooks. Chris Cillizza of the Washington Post and WashingtonPost.com awaiting whatever the Republicans have as a gift at the next press conference. Thank you, Chris. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Keith. You too.
So